Alright guys, we need to check in on our old friend Nick Calandra from Second Wind Group, formerly of The Escapist, and this has been a very fascinating story to watch, unravel and unfold as time has gone by here. I haven't talked about Nick Calandra a whole lot lately. I've avoided him and Alyssa Mercante. I've just kind of given up on the whole drama side of it. Like, some of this stuff is interesting for a while. But, after a bit, it just gets to be pretty repetitive. It gets to be where it's just stupid drama for no, point whatsoever. It doesn't serve any purpose. But now we're seeing some massive details and expose, if you will, on Nick Calandra from people who have worked directly with him, which kind of shows just the level of maliciousness that this dude operates with. Like, he, honest to God, seems to be a vindictive, vile, despicable person more than we already knew. So to catch you up, Nick Calandra, he was the editor-in-chief at The Escapist before they went under. He then went and started his own, co-founded something called Second Wind Group, which again is more of like the whole collective of personalities where they're discussing video games and all these different topics. But essentially, he's still like the HBIC. He's still up at the very top with Yahtzee, I guess, another guy from The Escapist, where they're the ones in charge. And everyone else makes less money than he does. Just no matter how much input or how many hours people work, it's a collective. And just like, good communists are, he's at the top and everybody else makes less than he does. I think, again, Yahtzee's the only guy who makes more than Nick. And they have a Patreon that makes like $56,000 a month alone on top of their YouTube ad revenue, on top of everything else that they do. So this guy has not had any trouble finding ways to make money, finding ways to put money in his pocket. This didn't stop him, though, from going after his critics, going after people like Grummz, Smash JT. In fact, he even went after Smash JT and tried to get his website taken down. Then he went on the Side Scrollers podcast at the beginning of July, tried to basically deflect from the fact that he's a piece of crap human being. He likes to hang out with all the Kotaku types, the Sweet Baby Ink defenders, Alyssa Mercante, all the rest of them. He spends all of his time on Twitter hanging out with those people, talking shit about Grummz, talking shit about anybody who's right of center or even moderately political. And yet he comes out and says stuff like this. This is a clip. In fact, I think a few of us clipped this when he said it on the podcast. That just kind of shows how despicable of a human being he really is. Just listen to this for 1 second.
Here's the issue with activism when it comes to like taking over properties is that they're amazingly explicitly like leftist games, but they're made by leftists to be leftist for leftists. But Final Fantasy and Tomb Raider and Suicide Squad, Assassin's Creed, they've all been changed away from their original intent.
I mean, you just said it, most of the people that make games are progressive. So if you want more games to be made that aren't progressive, people need to step up and start making their games.
Okay, but when you speak,
but they're getting. That's the thing is, people that are working for these companies are literally being fired if they express anything that isn't under this whole woke ideology umbrella.
People are losing their jobs anyways.
Right there, where he says people are losing their jobs anyways. I mean, honest to God, what a scummy thing to say. But again, this is a guy who looks at it and says, I've got my job, I'm getting paid. The people that are on my side are on the, quote, right side of history, and they're the ones who are in charge of everything right now. They're the ones who are calling the shots in the games industry, so I'm not going to complain too much. I'm not going to rock the boat. But of course, his hate boner, as Grummz called it, goes all the way back to April of this year, or maybe further beyond that. And in this next video that we get to, there's a lot of his vicious, vengeful personality that comes out, where he actually has these situations where he creates these arch rivals in his mind with these people, these personalities that he is vindictive and has to continue to go after, essentially to ruin these people's lives. Remember, at one point, Nick Calandra was quoted as saying, go after their funding sources. So again, he spent about a month and a half trying to dig up dirt on Grummz, trying to essentially find enough information to expose him as a scammer, even going so far as to allegedly inadvertently dox him. Again, the dox was very debatable as far as like what information was actually available and how much of it was actually responsible as far as like what Nick was responsible for. But the long and the short of it is, this was a very messy situation that Nick Calandra fueled, and of course, it's all stemmed from his desire to see these people's lives ruined. Well, recently, we saw Sebastian Ruiz from Second Wind resign. And this is a guy who was like fourth from the top of the ladder. Right? I believe he was the third or fourth highest paid person from Second Wind. And he put the blame squarely on Nick Calandra. Basically said this guy is a tyrant to work with. He's an animal. He's sick in the head. He spends all of his time online chasing off our advertisers, chasing off our sponsorships, chasing off anybody who'd want to work with us. The statement he released says, when I joined Second Wing Group, I was under the assumption that we were forming a team of creatives with equal value and equal say. Individual creators would oversee their personal series and the group would decide how to run the business together. It is plain as day that we've recreated the toxic corporate environment we abandoned. Talking about the Escapist, because again, he left the Escapist or was fired, and then after Nick Calandra co-founded the Second Wing Group, this guy, he goes by Frost of Rivia, he decided to go and join up because he thought, hey, I'll give this a chance. Led by a petulant wannabe CEO who overspends, overpromises, underdelivers, sows division, tarnishes our image, asserts his creative vision, or rather creative blindness, and sabotages anyone's attempt to correct him, all while he fails his most basic duties, joyrides around the world, clout farms, and expects the community in Yahtzee to foot the bill. Because Nick Calandra tanks our YouTube revenue and makes us undesirable for sponsors, it is beyond incompetence. He goes on to say, Nick Calandra operates in bad faith to serve his ego, and this group lacks the attitude and processes to appropriately deal with inaction and inability to deliver the core capabilities of our roles. Board of Directors lacks a knowledgeable enough majority to see through even the most basic Google searchable errors and Nick's farcical directions and use their personal feelings as a substitute for information, even when presented with dumbed-down versions at their repeated request. And again, talking about how Nick is just this horrible, vapid, evil little man who is just ruining their business, driving it into the ground. And it didn't even stop there. So another person, second person, resigned. I believe his name is Cisco Araneta. He stepped down immediately after this guy, Frost, because he's like, yeah, I'm glad we had, such a great time here. We had some dope clients that we've worked with. But all I can say is we exceeded sales goals every single month. And again, the sales goals is something that Nick hammered home and tried to pin on the blame for why the company wasn't making enough money was you guys are not meeting your sales goals. And that's something else that they got into in a previous statement and in this video that we're going to watch now. So just so you guys know, I'm going to link this video down below. I want you to watch the whole thing when you have time. It's about 23 minutes long. I pulled a couple segments that I want to focus on, and I think they just kind of exemplify everything that went wrong and exactly what's wrong with Nick Calandra's personality and the reason that he is just possibly one of the worst, most divisive, evil, vile pieces of scum in games media, in games journalism, if you will, that exists today. So just listen to this. This is that guy Frost talking about his experiences with Nick Calandra.
His actions, however, have been anything but noble. During my short time at The Escapist and at SWG, he attempted to steer content in a direction that validated his views and minimized criticism of his biases and underhandedly tried to micromanage every creative decision. He isolated, overworked, verbally attacked, and manipulated his coworkers. He blackballed developers that asked for game coverage one too many times for his liking, even though he set himself as the direct point of contact for the group and was actively against the idea of us giving free shoutouts or small deals to smaller devs who couldn't afford it. He would then try to funnel them back his way to bargain for paid consultations. All the while, he misrepresented audience feedback to exert his vision on the channel and misled the team and community about the cost of running a business in order to appeal to their sympathy and draw out more money from them. And all of this is so he can finally fulfill his creative vision, and when pressed on why he is paid as much as he is, he responds, I've gotten accustomed to it.
Okay, so right here you can see Yahtzee $12,500 a month. Nick was the next highest paid person at $8,000 a month. And I believe Frost was either the $6,250 or $5,416 right here.
A certain lifestyle, and I have a mortgage to pay. In 6 months, his business decisions, content strategy, and community management raised our costs, just our cost, from somewhere around $600,000 to a forecasted ballooning $1 million cost operation, and eroded. Just
think about that. By his direction, Nick essentially making all the decisions, calling the shots, put them at over $1 million a year in operating costs and expenses. Absolutely mind-blowing. And then, of course, we have this interview right here where essentially Nick got called out by some of his former coworkers and employees before he worked at Second Wind. This is crazy to listen to. Let me find it for you right here.
Me. I think it's time for us to...
Okay, hang on. Let me back up one sec. Sorry, I'm doing this on the fly.
Financial stake in the company whatsoever, even though he repeatedly promised pay, and it was the work of the volunteers that boosted Gamumentary's value to make a sale in the first place. Each one resigned during that meeting, and in the end, he didn't tell them how much the site was purchased for.
Like, I'm completely aware. I'm not saying you don't have a stake in the site. You've worked on the documentaries. And
now, this is Nick speaking to these employees, just so you have a reference point.
all that, and I totally plan to compensate you guys for that. But those are not... The financial dealings of the site are mine and mine alone.
I think that's what we disagree with.
You can't. Literally, my name is on the domain name. I pay the bills.
That's fine. We're not saying that necessarily.
I pay the taxes on the site.
It's that for morale to improve across the team, that cannot go forward. In order for us to feel like a team and not peasants in a kingdom, that process has to change.
The financial, that's not the business dealings of the site. The financials of the site are with me.
I think it's time for us to kind of come to a point in a way. I'm going to speak for myself here. There were things that I was hoping to get out of this meeting in terms of changes, agreed upon changes that we kind of went through, etc. And Nick, the truth is I don't feel like there is enough change coming from you in terms of actually wanting to make the site better and own up to mistakes that have been.
Now, again, there are debatable positions you can have about who's responsible. You know, if something belongs to the person, the CEO, the founder, the business owner, who, you know, he's the one that's ultimately going to have the financial say as to what they spend money on, how they invest, direction they take the company, all that kind of stuff. I'm a believer that the business owner, first and foremost, should have the decision whether or not his employees or coworkers or whatever agree with him. The buck stops here when you're the guy on top, right? When you're the high man on the totem pole, you're the one ultimately responsible to make those tough decisions. But just wait till you hear the level of disrespect he has for these people in his response.
Been made by you or by others or by all of us. And quite frankly, at this point, I'm out. I'm out of the website. I don't want to be part of this anymore if my effort and my work for more than a year, more than 30 plus pieces of content is not going to be appreciated. And that there's not going to be any changes going forward.
I ran OnlySP for 4 years, and people did a hell of a lot more work for me than you've done.
Okay, let's stop insulting people.
Again, right there, the guy says, well, I'm out, and he's like, good. The absolute level of disrespect that he has for everybody else. And this is the last piece we're going to focus on, is essentially this segment that says uncovering Nick's unethical behavior at The Escapist. Now, remember, a lot of what Gamergate was founded on, the movement itself, was ethics in journalism and in journalists who were essentially taking favors to give good reviews to games, sometimes that they didn't even play or that they didn't like. But again, this whole idea of playing ball with these companies to give a good review to get access, and, you know, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. Just listen to him talk about Nick when he was at The Escapist.
Direction. Say you wanted to cover your favorite game. Well, Nick wouldn't greenlight or promote it until you covered one of his favorite games first, or one of his undisclosed connections. I can't state the games because it might reveal the creators, but he was getting bolder with the unethical quid pro quo. More documentary opportunities as well as gaming gear were coming up for Calandra. But Nick couldn't keep the video side in the green, so he used money from the editorial side to offset the losses, a major red flag that led to the parent company splitting the video side away from the rest of the site. Nick was on his own now, not doing well, and then gamers bought up Escapist magazine. This was around the time I showed up. I didn't see many red flags with Nick at the time, but man, did I have a bad time under gamers. He led me to believe it was his corporate bosses. He dangled a full-time contract over me for months and ignored his boss's attempts to promote me. He had me voice 60 videos for his Prima project where we assembly line Lords of the Fallen guides to no success. He had me voice his Stratos videos and shorts. He wanted me to come up with yet another series and another series. All of this on top of my other duties. I was in big-time crunch mode, and Nick was practically begging me to get him through the year because his bosses set unreal expectations. Turns out that was a lie. Nick was the one who promised them $805,000 in 2024 from YouTube video side alone, while we were losing $30 to $60K quarterly. Nick was all over the place and received numerous complaints of creating a hostile work environment. He demanded the contracts be rewritten so that everyone answered to him, and it created this strange back and forth where Nick and his boss were fighting over me until the CEO pulled me into a...
I'm going to leave it right there, guys. I don't want to take away too much of this guy's thunder. I have to steal his thunder, you know, rain on his parade. I'm going to link to the video. Massive props to him for taking the time to put this all together. He said there's probably going to be a part 2 or part 3. I can't wait to see what other like juicy details come out, because there is so much to this situation where, again, this started off as petty drama on Twitter. Started off as Nick blocking a bunch of us. I got blocked back in April for covering this situation with him and Grummz, him and Gigabear, and this whole situation about, you know, scam games and uncovering corruption and all this crap that Nick claimed. But then when it came out that he was just buddies with Alyssa Mercante and all these other vapid leftists on Twitter, and he simply existed to own the chuds, the more and more we find out about this man, the sicker and sicker he seems. And honest to God, they cannot get him away from second wind groups, you know, quick enough. I think at this point, he has probably tanked the company, much like he has tanked several other companies that he has worked with in the past. But I'm going to leave it right there, guys. Again, I'm going to link to his video. Go check out the whole thing when you have time, and I will catch you on the next one. All right, and if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you for being here. I do have 2 channels, Minimal Effort Podcast, as well as my gaming channel. I do have a Twitch and Kick for my gaming channel. We do live streams over there occasionally, maybe once a week. And then if you are in the market for a new PC, make sure to check out Meta PCs. Click the link I have down below. Use code TBO at checkout for a special discount. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.